Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to today's session. I'm very happy that you're joining me for what we're going to be talking about today, which I'm going to tell you in just a moment. So first, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Diego Palacios. I'm a teacher trainer at the Instituto de Formación Docente Paraguayo Americano at Centro Cultural Paraguayo Americano in Asunción, Paraguay. And I've been teaching since 2012. So welcome to today's session officially. Today's session is called Ready to Learn, Tips for Creating an Ideal Online Learning Atmosphere. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, the ideal online learning atmosphere. So here is a brief roadmap of today's session. First, we're going to be looking at the purpose of warm-up activities. Then we're going to look at how to plan warm-up activities. Next, we're going to look at sample activities that you can adapt for your own classes. And finally, we're going to talk about class netiquette and the role that class netiquette plays in creating an ideal online learning atmosphere. So are you ready? All right, let's get right into it. Let's take a look at this question on our screen right now. And it says, in your opinion, what does an ideal online learning atmosphere look like? So think about this for a moment. What does an ideal online learning atmosphere look like? Maybe this includes your students feeling comfortable, feeling happy to be there. Maybe it includes your students participating. Maybe you having a great time in your class as well, right? So there's a lot that we can talk about when it comes to an ideal online learning atmosphere. So let's keep going. We're gonna address that question again in just a moment. So let's take a look at the situation that these two pictures on the screen represent. So we have the first one, which is, there we have an empty tank versus a full tank, right? That's the first one. And the second one, we have someone getting gas, putting gas in their car, right? So now, for a moment, imagine that you're going on a road trip. You're going on a road trip. You have many different places that you want to visit. So you need to get there. You have your destination, right? So think about this question. Which situation will get you to your destination? Is it the first one, the one that says empty, or the second one, which we can assume we're getting a full tank, right? Because we want to get to our destination. So yeah, if it said the second one, then that's exactly what we're looking for, right? We want to put gas in our car so we can get where we want to go. And this is a good analogy for what warm-up activities do, right? It's about giving that extra power, right, that our class and our students need in order to get to their destination, which in this case, we can think about our class goals or the goals of our lesson as our destination, right? So if we want students to get there, they're gonna need that power. Warm-up activities are a great way to give them that power. So let's first talk about warm-up activities. So all about warm-up activities. So just what is a warm-up? So let's take a look at a few details here. The first one says that warm-ups are activities presented at the beginning of a class. So we will find warm-up activities at the beginning, at the start of many lessons. So that's the first thing we need to remember. Warm-up activities tend to be short but impactful, meaning that they have a lasting effect throughout our lesson. So they have this big impact. They have to be effective, right? Because as I said, we want to give students that power that they need to get to their destination and to reach the goals of the lesson. Warm-up activities make students comfortable and get them involved. So from the first moment in our class, we want students to feel happy, to feel included. So we do warm-up activities to promote this sort of feeling among our students that they're part of the class, and we want them to be as happy as possible to be there. And one more thing I want to share about warm-up activities at the moment is that they tend to range from the ones that require little to very little preparation to the ones that are more complex and need more preparation. So today we're going to be looking at some examples as we saw in the roadmap of the ones that require little preparation to the ones that may be a little more complex, but you can adapt to your own classes, to the needs of your own classes. Now, why use warm-up activities in our online classes? So there's quite a few reasons. First, online classes feel more straightforward, meaning that we tend to be more efficient with time in online classes, right? So because classes are more straightforward, we want to make sure that our classes have a structure. There are different moments and that students are engaged, they're involved from the very first moment. So another reason to use warm-up activities in our online classes is that students need to transition from home mode to learning mode. So it's very important in general that we know how to divide our time, right? And since we're spending a lot of time home lately, we know, the lines can get a little bit blurry sometimes. So when we enter our classes, we need to know there's a transition there from home mode to learning mode. So warm-up activities are a great way to facilitate that transition into learning mode. Also, when we use warm-up activities, anxiety levels drop as students feel they are part of the group. So they feel included, they feel that they can participate, that they have something to bring to the table because they get to participate from the first moment, and what they say matters, their opinion matters. And also another reason to use warm-up activities is that the start of an online class really sets the mood for the lesson. And this has a huge impact on the quality of the class atmosphere. So if we're talking about wanting to create the ideal online learning atmosphere, then warm-up activities are a great way to set the mood or set the tone for our class from the very first moment. Now, what should I take into consideration when preparing a warm-up? So here's a few things that we have to consider when preparing a warm-up activity. First, we have to define the purpose of our warm-up, meaning what exactly do we want to achieve by presenting this particular warm-up? We can say maybe we want students to feel included from the first moment, sharing something that's important, such as what their day has been like so far. Or maybe we want them to start using some vocabulary that we're going to tackle in today's session, or we want to strengthen rapport with them. So we want to think about the purpose of doing that particular warm-up. Then we have to establish the pattern of interaction that we're expecting from our students. So do we want students to be talking only to us teachers, like one-to-one, and then us teachers talking to individual students? Do we want to, get the ball rolling, but then sort of let students take over and do a little bit of interaction with one another? So we have to be very clear, especially in online classes, regarding how we want interaction to take place throughout the lesson. Then we need to visualize how this particular warm-up activity fits within the entire lesson. So we need to understand that once we finish the warm-up, we're going to move on to the rest of the lesson. So there has to be a coherent transition, a smooth transition, a sequence that students can follow. And that has to begin with the warm-up. Everything has to be connected. So we need to visualize how our warm-up is going to fit within the entire lesson. And this is extremely important, the fourth point. We need to include an element of mystery. And I like those quotation marks there. An element of mystery that will spark curiosity. So this is extremely important when we want to engage our students. That element of mystery, we really want to create that curiosity and engage students in what we are going to present in that particular session. So we need to take all of this into consideration when we're preparing a warm-up. Now, some other considerations, but this time for presenting a warm-up. So I got my warm-up all planned out now, right? But now I need to present it in my class. So what are some details that I need to take into consideration? Well, first, remember to always model the activity, right? So words are not enough, words are not sufficient. So we want to model the activity. We want students to see the activity, but also be involved in that activity. So you can show them what you're expecting them to do by actually involving them in that. So you can choose, for example, one of your students and model that activity with that or those students, right? So that everybody gets the chance to see what's going to be happening. We also need to set clear expectations of interactions. And this is what we were saying before. We need to be very orderly, very organized in online classes in terms of how students are going to be interacting with one another. We want our classes to be communicative, interactive. We want students to participate, but we also want there to be order, right? We want them to be able to understand what is happening. And we do that by setting clear expectations of interactions and the patterns of interactions that we're looking for. Remember to also go over the instructions before starting. Always double checking the students know exactly what to do. You're going to have them tell you what they're going to be doing and in what order, in what sequence. And it's also extremely important to perform a smooth transition to the next activity. So we were just saying that everything needs to be connected from the warm-up to the wrap-up of the lesson. So make sure that your warm-up fits into your lesson in a way that allows you to make a smooth transition to whatever's coming after your warm-up. Now, let's look at some sample activities. These are warm-up activities that you can adapt for your own classes. And as I mentioned before, some of them require little to no preparation, and some others require a little bit more preparation in terms of the time you will spend preparing them before your class. All right, so the first warm-up activity, the first sample activity is called names and adjectives. This is extremely easy. It requires little to no preparation, depends on how you want to present it. So here is what's going to happen when you present this particular warm-up activity in your class. So first, students are going to choose a positive adjective based on the initial of their name and introduce themselves, right? Then second, students are going to rename themselves so that their new name is displayed on the screen. And third, students' new names are used throughout the lesson to address them and to reinforce the positive adjective, right? So especially going back to the second point, students are going to be using their new name, right? with the positive adjective that they chose. So here it's going to depend on, for example, which platform you're using and whether students are able to actually edit their names, or maybe you as the host of the session of the class are going to be in charge of making sure that they can edit their names. So it really depends on the settings and on the platform you're going to be using. Now, for example, we have a list of adjectives here that you can get just by performing a Google search on positive personality adjectives. So this is the one that I got here. It's got about 100 adjectives. Now, the idea is for us to take a look at this list and kind of do a smaller compilation that we can adapt to our students, right? So even knowing your students' names beforehand is going to be very, very helpful. So you know maybe which letters, which initials are going to need more adjectives, right? So that way you can be prepared. For example, in my case, I could say, and I'm looking at the list of adjectives here, I could say dynamic Diego, right? Or decisive Diego, right? You're gonna have your students choose a positive adjective that goes with their initials. Now, the second warm-up activity is called names and mimics. And this is really, really simple, but it's very effective. It's something that students enjoy a lot. So here's how it works. First, students introduce themselves. Then students include a movement or a gesture for every syllable of their name. And third, the class greets the person doing the same movements or gestures. Now, for example, in my case, I could go something like, hello, my name is Diego, right? Diego. So the class is going to greet me by saying, hello, Diego, right? So this is also a way to get students to use a little bit of movement, right? You will see that some of them might do more dynamic gestures or movements, and that's the whole point, right? To use a little bit of body language, a little bit of movement to make things as dynamic as possible. And this really takes very, very little preparation. So this is the second warm-up activity. Now, the third warm-up activity is Scavenger Hunt, which is honestly one of my favorites. It's really cool and students love it. And by the way, here we have a picture of a teddy bear, and try to figure out how this is connected to Scavenger Hunt, right? Take a minute to think about it. Now, let me tell you, for Scavenger Hunt, you should prepare a list of items that students will need to find in their homes. So they're actually going to have to locate the items that you tell them, right? So once you tell them the item that the items that they need to go locate and bring, they'll need to get up and actually go grab the items, right? So for example, their favorite toy, and this is, you can adapt this obviously, but you can try this out with children, for example. It works perfectly, right? So you can tell them to go find their favorite toy. So they're gonna find, for example, this teddy bear, which is pretty cool, and they're gonna grab their favorite toy. They're gonna come back. That's the next step. Students need to return to the computer, right? They sit down and they show the object in front of the camera, which is also a nice way of, showing something that's meaningful to them. And at the same time, we're including movement here. And as an option here, we have the fourth point. Students can talk about the object. So if you've taught, for example, children, you're going to know that they like to talk about their, the favorite objects, such as their favorite toys, for example. So you can adapt this, as I said, to the needs or the level of your students, right? And you can have them, for example, go grab their favorite book, right? It's another chance to get them to talk about something that they like. Great. So we move on to activity number 4, which in this case is Menti. Menti is extremely popular right now. A lot of people are using it, and there's a lot of reasons why people like to use Menti, and especially for warm-up activities. So let's talk about Menti. When we use Menti, students are asked to think about a picture, a question, or a situation. So we first need a prompt, right? We need a prompt for students to think about, right? We want to provide them with something they can reflect on. And it can be a picture, a question, or a situation. Now, you will need to take students to the Menti website and have them write their answers on the Menti website, which you will later be able to look at and share with everybody. This is the next point. Once you get students' answers, thoughts, opinions on the Menti website, you as the host or the person who created the Menti activity will be able to access students' comments and share those comments with the rest of the class. And one cool thing you can do after you read students' comments is that you can ask follow-up questions to keep the discussion going. So this is one activity, a Menti activity that I recently used in one of my classes. It worked out pretty well. And what we were doing is we were talking about extreme sports. And I showed my students this picture, and I told them, as it says here, that I wanted them to describe the picture in one word. So that was the initial picture situation or question that I posed, okay? So they were presented with that particular situation. Now, then I took them through this set of instructions here on Menti. I showed them this is what we're going to be doing. So I told them to open their web browser and to go to menti.com and then to enter the code. They're going to need a code in order to access the activity that you prepared. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. They will also, I told them they would also need to write one word to describe the picture, and that they should, after step 3, return to our meeting. So let me just show you very quickly what we did, right? So as I said, you need to take your students to the Menti website, which is menti.com in this case. And they will need to enter the code that you give them. So for that particular activity, the code was 91 30 83 5. So once they submitted or enter that code, they would be able to see the picture that I was showing them in my presentation, and also this prompt here, which was to describe the picture in one word. And in this case, for example, students can write scary, right? So they think maybe that the picture is scary, and then they click submit. All right. So I had previously created this presentation, okay, in mentimeter.com, which you should also check out. Is a great way to get started with creating a presentation, okay? So what I did was I then shared the results with them by clicking here on present, right? So they were able to see all their comments and their classmates' comments. This was a lot of fun. And it was a great way to sort of keep the conversation going. All right, so let me take you back to our presentation. So we finally talked about this being a picture of a person who was trying skydiving. So it serves as a way to lead us into the topic of extreme sports, right? This is, again, the word cloud that we were able to put together in collaboration. All right, so now we'll move on to warm-up activity number 5, which is called picture reveal. Now for picture reveal, this is also one that requires a little bit of preparation, just like the one before, which was Menti. And here we have a question: what's the hidden picture? And in this particular warm-up activity, students take turns to select numbers in order to reveal a part of a hidden picture. So we need to first come up with a picture that we want students to guess, right? So they'll be taking turns selecting numbers that I'm going to be showing you and revealing little by little what's hidden behind all those numbers. Then students are going to try to guess what is hiding behind those numbers. So they're going to try to guess what the hidden picture is. And this is a great way also to elicit extra information about the picture. So again, the picture can be adapted to whatever you want to talk about that particular day in that particular lesson. So let's see what this looks like, right? So here we have, and I'm also going to be showing you how to get a template to prepare this. I'm going to be showing you this at the end of today's session. So this is what we get, and here you can elicit. You can tell your students to, for example, tell you in the chat box or by opening their microphones, one of the numbers. They have to choose one of the numbers one at a time. So for example, someone comes up with number 4, right? So there, you reveal that particular number. Somebody else can go on to select number 6, right? Somebody else number 2, maybe number 8. And as you start to reveal parts that are important in the picture, you can start asking questions. What do you think this is? Where do you think this picture was taken, for example, right? Do you think there are people in this picture? Why do you think there are people in this picture, right? So you can start asking these questions, and at some point, someone's going to choose the particular box or number that's really going to have them guess what's going on. So someone's going to come up and say, this is rock climbing, right? So you validate their answer. You tell them, yes, this is rock climbing, right? And this is a great way, again, to keep the discussion going. You can tell them, do you think it is easy to go rock climbing? Is this something you're interested in trying? Do you think it's dangerous? And so on, right? There's a lot of things you can do with just one picture that really captures students' attention. All right, so now we are getting to question reveal, right? So for question reveal, which is our sample activity number 6, we have sort of a, let's say, similar procedure here. Very similar to the one that we just saw, which was picture reveal. So now we want students to look at questions and answer questions that we give them, all right? So in this case, students are going to select a number. So I'm going to be showing you where they're going to be selecting the number from. And then the teacher will reveal a hidden question or prompt behind the number, right? And as we're going through both picture reveal and question reveal, you will notice that there is this element of mystery that we were talking about earlier that we have to create when we are preparing our warm-up. So in this case, we also have a hidden question that is going to create this sort of mystery, or at least curiosity on the part of the students. So the teacher is going to be revealing that hidden question or prompt behind the number. Then a brief conversation is going to take place based on the question or prompt. So we again want students to be able to interact with one another based on the prompts that we give them. And the cycle can go on. Okay, you will decide how much is enough, or how long, in terms of how many minutes do you want students to go on doing the conversations, right? But the plan is for students to choose another classmate and to have them choose another number and participate in a new conversation, right? So this is what question reveal looks like, right? So we have here a lot of boxes with questions that are hidden behind them. And again, this is how we start to spark a little bit of curiosity on the part of the students, right? So all we have here is numbers. You can have, maybe one volunteer. You will always have, that group of students really want to be the first ones to try out the activity. So you can use their collaboration for this, right? So you will model the activity first with someone. Maybe you choose one of your students, somebody volunteers, and they choose, for example, number 12, right? So you go to number 12, and they have a prompt there. Obviously, the prompt you can adapt to your own classes, maybe the topics, okay? So in this case, it says favorite dessert. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be asking that student, what's your favorite dessert, to model the activity. And maybe this student is going to tell me, well, my favorite dessert is cake, is chocolate, is ice cream, right? And we can keep the conversation going as much as necessary here, right? So I can ask the student, okay, when was the last time you had cake or ice cream or chocolate, right? So you get the point, right? It's to keep the conversation going here. Now, after we are done with our conversation, that student is going to choose another classmate. And that classmate is going to choose the number, for example, number 14 here, right? And that student that I modeled the activity with is going to ask his or her classmate, okay, what's your favorite book, right? And this again can go into a conversation, can turn into a conversation. Obviously, you will moderate that conversation, but you're letting students kind of own the activity here, right? And that's exactly what we want. Great. Now let's move on to warm-up activity number 7, which in this case is a board game. So for this board game, we can consider that there's a possibility of playing in teams or with volunteers. You can do it either way, right? And if you're if you're playing in teams, then remember that, for example, the class can be split according to the students' initials to make teams. And you can play this with 2, 3, 4 teams or groups if you want to use a different term, right? So you can have, all the students from whose names start with A to the students whose name starts with, let's say, J or L. They're going to be part of the first group or team, right? So this is just one way to split the class in teams or groups. Or obviously, you can also just play with volunteers, right? And how does this game work? Well, first students have to roll the dice to reveal a question or prompt. And the dice is just another great addition that we can use. And I'm going to be showing you some resources related to this as well. So it adds that random element, right? Now, students also have to answer the question from the board game, and the game goes on and on as necessary, right? Again, you have to really tailor this to how much time has been allotted for that particular section of your class and what the purpose of doing this board game is, right? So this is what the board game looks like. And again, I will, at the end of today's session, be showing you where you can get these PowerPoint games. All right. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be walking students through this board game that has a lot of questions and prompts. For example, have you ever lived abroad? Right? Have you ever tried an extreme sport? Have you ever found money on the street? And so on. So this is obviously for a more intermediate, advanced class, but you can adapt this to the needs of your own students. Now, let me show you. You can use a real dice, which is always a great idea. It's very easy to incorporate into your lesson. Or another thing you can do is use this, right? Which is teacherled.com. We have this dice tool here. And I want to make sure that you can also hear the sound that's going to come out with the dice, right? So you can use this, right? By clicking here, you're going to roll the dice. And in this case, I'm just using one dice, but I can use two, I can use three, all right? So let me take you back to our board game. And in this case, we have a 1. So we rolled a 1. Now I'm going to go back to our board game. I'm going to move from the start. So remember, we were here at the start and now we rolled a 1. And this is the cool thing. How does this work? And this works this way, right? When you go to the first square here, you can choose any of these 4 corners, right? You can click here, you can click here, here, or here, right? And the same corner is always going to have the same color, no matter where you are on the board game, right? So how does this work? As you move, or as one of your teams or one of your volunteers moves along the board game, you're going to be removing them from where they were before, and you're going to be taking them to the next box. Okay, so you can give that a try, right? Now, let me just quickly go back to where we were. So we were doing the board game, right? And this is one of the activities that does take a little bit more preparation, but it's worth it. As always, it needs to have a purpose, right? So always think about the purpose of your activities when you are planning them and when you're implementing them in your class, right? So after the board game warm-up activity number 7, let's take a look at some practical considerations here. So practical considerations to make sure that our warm-up activities are effective, that they're useful for our classes. So first, make sure that your warm-up is challenging but not impossible. And this is extremely important, right? We want students to be engaged. We want them to be curious, right? Involved. We want to present them with a challenge, but we want it to be a challenge that they can actually figure out, right? One that is not impossible to fulfill considering, for example, their level, and we do not want them to be frustrated when participating in that activity. So it's about finding that sort of balance, the perfect balance there in between. Challenging, but not impossible or frustrating. Then, the second thing we want to consider is that we want our activities to be fun but purposeful. And this goes back to what we were saying before. We want our warm-up activity to be entertaining, definitely, but we want there to be a purpose for it. So we were saying we can use a warm-up activity to get students to know each other, or to maybe to strengthen our rapport with them, or we want them to start using or being exposed to the vocabulary or the grammar point that we're going to be addressing in that particular class, right? So there has to be a purpose for us to put that warm-up on our lesson plan and then to implement it in our classes. Now, third consideration is that we want to give we want there to be an active but guided participation. So in online classes, we need to really facilitate the interactions of our students, right? We want it to be done in an orderly way, in an organized way. So we want students to be involved actively, but we have to be there. We have to be there to provide support, to provide guidance, right? So we're facilitating those interactions. And our fourth consideration is that we want our classes to be interactive but orderly, all right? And this again goes back to establishing a pattern of interaction that we're expecting from our students. All right, so let's talk about class netiquette and how class netiquette is directly related to creating the ideal online learning atmosphere, right? So when we talk about class netiquette, we refer to rules or parameters that facilitate and guide interactions. So we need these parameters in our online classes, just like we need these parameters in our face-to-face classes, just to provide that framework, right, to guide the interactions in our lessons. Remember that these parameters or rules, if you want to call them, must be reinforced constantly as part of a routine. So they have to become a routine, something that students are used to and that they're comfortable with. So you can present this netiquette or these rules or parameters at the beginning of each class. So when we have this netiquette for our class, what it does is it creates a framework of familiarity with online learning. Again, this is to give structure, to give that framework to our online classes. And so students kind of know, so we know how to guide students, that they know what's sort of expected from them during our lessons. And class netiquette also promotes effective and respectful communication, right? It's extremely important that we promote respectful interactions during our classes. So how do I create my own class netiquette? So here are some questions that you can consider when creating your own class netiquette, and then I will show you what an example looks like. So first, think about punctuality, right? So what time does the class start? That's the first one. Then are students expected to use their names to join the class? And this is extremely important for online classes. What materials will students need during the class? What tools can students use to communicate during the class? When and how do students communicate during the class? And what is expected from students during group work? All right, so based on those questions, you may come up with a class netiquette that looks like this. Right, I'm gonna go very quickly through some of these points over here. So you may tell your students at the beginning of the class to remember that class starts at 9 a.m., that they need to use their name and last name to enter the class. For example, if there's a waiting room option, which is for security measure, as a security measure, right? You want to use that one for safety, safety measures, right? Also, you can tell them to prepare the materials they're going to need, such as textbook, pencil, and eraser, to choose a quiet place so they can concentrate, to keep their camera open, to interact with everybody, and to use, the microphone, reactions, the chat box to participate during the class. And again, this is something that you can think about in terms of what's going to be most beneficial for our class, and you can adapt. So this is just sort of an example that you can come up with based on the questions that we looked at before. Now, as we get ready to wrap up, let's do a little bit of a recap here. So we said that the start of an online class impacts the quality of the class atmosphere. So we get that power from the very first moment to set the tone, to set the mood for our online class. And we want there to be cooperation, we want there to be interaction. And so we get that chance at the beginning of each of our classes. We also said that warm-up activities facilitate those initial interactions, right? This is when we set the tone or the mood of the lesson, we're starting to facilitate those initial interactions, which also help us strengthen rapport with our students. Warm-up activities promote cooperation from the start, right? So you can have students work together, work as a group, work in pairs. So you'll come up with a system here so that they know that they need to cooperate to get to the destination, which is, again, the goals of our lesson, right? The purpose of your warm-up needs to be clearly defined. We talked about this. We want our activities, our warm-up activities, to be fun but purposeful, right? So we need to define the purpose of doing that activity. So what purpose is this fulfilling? How does this fit into the whole structure of my class? And finally, an element of mystery is always helpful for engaging students. Remember that one of the best things we can do is to engage students by awakening that curiosity, right? That spark in that curiosity. And one of the best ways to do this is by creating that sort of mystery, which we looked at today in some of the warm-up activities. So where can I find the resources that were used in this particular session? Well, here you go. You can check out Menti that we looked at today. You can check out Technologic WordPress, so that you can, there's a lot of templates there for PowerPoint games and activities. We have the classroom dice, which we looked at. You can find some extra warm-up activities here and some free photos and slides here in these 3 websites. Now, thank you very much. I really appreciate you joining this session today. Hopefully you were able to pick up some new activities or ideas for your classes that you can implement in your very next session, right? So once again, thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.